Hi, Rebecca Zung here, and this is episode 3 in a 5-part series with Dr. Ramani on how to negotiate with a narcissist. And this is part 1 of episode 3, do's and don'ts of negotiating with a narcissist. You're going to want to watch all the way till the end so that when I upload part 2, you will be all caught up. And make sure that you also subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, so that you can be notified when part 2 is uploaded. So without further ado, here's part 1 of do's and don'ts of negotiating with a narcissist. Hi, this is Rebecca Zung, top 1% divorce attorney and the best-selling author of the books Negotiate Like You Matter and Breaking Free, a Step-by-Step Divorce Guide. And today I have a really special treat. It's part 3 of the series that we've been doing on how to negotiate with a narcissist. Today it's going to be do's and don'ts of negotiating with a narcissist. So you're definitely going to want to watch all the way till the end. And I am here again with my special guest, Dr. Ramani, who is the foremost authority on narcissism in the United States and maybe even in the world. And, and it's been such a pleasure. I've learned so much from her about narcissists and narcissism, and you're going to learn even more today. So thanks for joining us. So, Dr. Ramani, we talked about, the toxicity of narcissists, the types of narcissists. We've talked about litigating with a narcissist and what you're getting into with that. And now we're going to talk about the do's and don'ts. One of the things that I say that people should definitely do is document. And I know you tell your clients that too.
Thing. It's a good place to start, because I think it is, if it's the only do you do, you're in good shape. And I don't just use this document recommendation just in marriages and close relationships and divorces. I make it a strong suggestion in workplace issues, in other kinds of disputes you may be having, sometimes even in family issues. And it's interesting, my motivation for documentation, as you can imagine, it's to substantiate a legal argument, yes. But it's also to help with your sanity. Because sometimes people are like, no, maybe that didn't happen. I'm like, no, sweetie, in your journal on January 5th, it happened. You wrote it down. They're like, oh, yeah. So, the narcissistic relationships are absolutely impacted by euphoric recall. People strangely are able to remember the good stuff about these really bad relationships. The documentation sometimes becomes a place where you can say, yeah, no, this isn't healthy.
Well, it's that, and I would add to that the reason, another really good reason to document is that narcissists are pathological liars. So you will catch them in lies if you document. And I've won entire cases on people's notes. So, and there's really no limit to how detailed you can be. It's really kind of just how meticulous you want to be. Because, if they're late for picking up the kids, if they're late for a payment on something, if they made a snide remark, if they wrote an email that was not reflective of a conversation and they tried to pawn it off as a conversation that you had, something like that, just any little thing that just seems off to you, just take note of it. Because, when you ask the question, how is he or she getting away with this, which you're going to ask that, and I always say there's no like divorce fairies that come out and stop people from doing things. So, they won't get away with it if you end up in front of the judge and you have the proper documentation.
It is I always say to people, want to know how you know you're being gaslighted or in a relationship with a narcissist? I'll tell you. In arguments, you put text messages in front of them, you feel compelled to record conversations, and you feel the need to write long novels of emails to them to explain your feelings. You're doing that because you're not being heard, and because you are being gaslighted so much that you have to show them this proof. This is taking this to another level, and for a different reason. Again, it's to provide that substantiation, and it's not just about writing things down, it's about saving everything. You must save every text message. You must save every voicemail. You must save every email. Nothing can go. You're going to start to feel like a hoarder before this is done, but you're going to have to do it because sometimes it's just that one message. And one thing I do also strongly encourage people to do, print it all out. And there's actually apps out there that allow you to download all your text messages and print them all out. Create a printout because in case something blows up with your phone or your email server or something, then at least you have the hard evidence. It's got to have dates, times, all of that. Print it all out. You might even want to get into like a once a month cycle where you print everything out and put it someplace safe.
Yeah. A couple of things I want to just make a comment on what you just said. Number one is for your own sake too. Remember that every text and every email and every writing is a potential trial exhibit. So if you don't want to see it again,
Thank you.
do not write it.
Yep, I love that.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, it will, if you don't want to see it again at a very inopportune time,
Yep.
meaning like in front of the judge, you know, where you're now having to explain and defend yourself, don't write it, don't send it.
But this becomes a great point of leverage because I'll tell you, nothing incenses a narcissist more than when you're not giving them equally long, bizarre text, like those long text messages
Yes.
that require you to click again to see the whole thing.
Right.
So what happens is if you give brief responses like, okay,
Yes.
let's talk later, they're going to just give you verbal
Correct,
diarrhea,
which is
great. So
Great
it's just, you
stuff.
get two for the price of one.
Yeah.
You don't engage and put your stuff down where you don't want it to be, and you get them just sort of putting it all out there, which you now have for later. So that's good.
And the other point I wanted to make about what you said was, you know, you feel this need to show them and defend it, you know, prove to them that what they
Yes,
said
yes.
was wrong, whatever. Don't do that.
No, I agree. Yep.
Don't do that. That's your leverage. Don't resist the urge to want to do that in the moment and prove to them. So listen, people, you're dealing with narcissists. Narcissists are not going to accept constructive feedback and make changes to their behavior based on their on your feedback and reflect on it and all of that stuff. It's not happening. So you can show them a text message that directly counteracts exactly what they just said, proves that they're lying, and somehow they will manipulate that away that it's not a lie. So, and even if it makes no sense whatsoever, I mean, sometimes they say things that make no sense whatsoever. But just resist that urge to want to show them the leverage. That would be a don't.
Yes.
You know, create your leverage. Do that, but don't give it away too
Right,
early.
right. And it's a classic, it's a poker game. You would not ever sit in a casino and say, or a card game and say, look at my cards, everyone.
Yeah.
Take a look. And now let's bet. So it's the same thing. It's just playing poker. What are some of the other big do's?
So I would say that you want to involve people that are going to be able to support you for sure. So you want to have a definite support system, but not people that are going to fan the flames and that sort of thing. So, you know, have a support team around you. Get a really good lawyer who understands narcissism. We talked about that in the last video too. So if you haven't watched that video, you should go check it out.
Get a really good psychologist or therapist who understands narcissism as well. Like, I cannot stress this one enough. It's not because I'm trying to create business for my field, but this idea of a support system, a lot of the people around you cannot have this conversation. If they've never experienced it, I'm amazed at how many people, my friends even, read my books and they're like, this seems really interesting, but I don't get it. Now it doesn't bother me because it's like, okay, I get that you don't get it. But if I was going through a narcissistic relationship, I would feel very gaslighted and lost. So the beauty of therapy with a therapist who understands narcissism is they get it, and the kinds of support and feedback you'll get from them will not leave you feeling that you've lost your mind, but rather that you feel understood and supported. So I do think you need to choose those, and you have to choose where you have the conversations. Not everyone in your network can hear the conversation.
Yeah, that's
They can't.
definitely
Yeah,
true.
Yeah. Anything else you'd say about that?
So the other thing is to use video for depositions.
Interesting.
You know, a lot of people say, well, that's more expensive. Now we have to pay for a videographer. Well, okay, I'm going to tell you, you're already paying a court reporter. You're already paying your lawyer. You're going through this expense. You know, don't cheap out and not spend an extra couple $100 for the videographer, because what happens with the depositions is the court reporter can only take down, you know, what is your name? My name is, you know, John Adams or whatever. And then it just, so when you see it on the page,
Yes,
it just looks
very
like
different.
type.
I agree.
But what narcissists will do is they're going to try to rile you up. They're going to try to unnerve you. So they're going to make faces. They're going to make little things under their breath.
Oh, yeah.
They're going to try to do things that upset you.
Yep.
Things that they know are upsetting you. They're going to pass notes to their lawyer so that it makes it look like they're saying something about you, and you're wondering what's going on with that. And so, my normal listeners will know, like I just say, like they're just less likely to act like a complete jackass if you have, because that's how they can act, especially the grandiose ones and the malignant ones, right? So using video for deposition can definitely help to rein in their behavior.
Any other do's?
Let me see. I have gather as much supporting documentation on everything as possible. So you're going to want to, do your research. Do your research for your side. So one of the things that I say all the time is, when you're dealing with a narcissist, people tend to be so focused on defending against what that narcissist is doing that they forget to prepare their own case.
That's right. That's interesting.
And it's just like in football. If all you have is a great defense and you have no offense, then you have no case.
Right.
And if your only case is just tearing down the other person, you aren't going to get anything that you want.
So, and here's what's interesting, because people who have been in narcissistic relationships who may not have already done the reading and gotten the education, they do what anyone would do if they feel they're being attacked or their reality is being doubted. They defend themselves. So after the life history of this relationship, where all they do is defend themselves, it can be often very difficult to turn that switch off.
Right.
And even in the work I do in working with survivors of narcissistic abuse, it's that don't defend yourself part. You have to have nerves of steel when someone is hurling all these bizarre, unfounded accusations at you, to nod at them and say, okay, and then walk away. And not engage it. And to me, I tell people, like, you know what? Forget all this meditation breathing. Like, this is your meditation. Like, toughening up and saying, I'm not going to respond to this. It takes more mindfulness. You could probably bend a spoon with the amount of mindfulness it takes to not defend to someone who is going after you. But now, after 10, 15, 20, 25 years of defending yourself against this person, it gets you nowhere.
And
it's time to stop.
And how you will feel better. And I actually asked somebody that I worked with in my work on coaching them through dealing with litigation with a narcissist. I said, how did you feel before I started working with you? And this happened to be a guy who was dealing with a narcissist ex-wife, and he said, helpless and abused.
Yep.
But what we did was we turned it around by creating a plan, a game plan, a framework, where he was actually going on the offensive.
Great. That's great.
And that's something that's almost foreign sometimes to people when they're just so used to defending, that they can actually turn around and take the controls and actually have the narcissist begging them to resolve the case.
Right.
It can happen.
Any other thoughts on do's before we turn to the don'ts?
I think that's basically because we covered having a strong lawyer, which is really important. We covered being prepared. The only other thing I really want to say about being prepared is don't make the mistake of going into a mediation or a settlement discussion just thinking you're just going to have a conversation. You make sure you have your leverage ready to go. Make sure you are ready to go as if you're going to court, because if you want to incentivize that person to settle and save thousands and thousands of dollars on going to court, if you go to court, you're basically throwing, your future destiny to the judge. And the judge might have a bad day. The judge might see things differently than you do. Judges make mistakes all the time. It's going to cost you thousands and thousands of dollars to go. So it's better if you can settle in mediation or in a settlement discussion, if you can.
Right.
But they're not going to unless you've given them the incentive to do that.
And I'm going to land it on one last do, and maybe it's my head as a psychologist, and I've said this. The people on my YouTube friends, I know you're going to say, again, lady, you're going to say this. realistic expectations, radical acceptance. And the reason I say this is a do is that you almost have to get up with an intention like, okay, I got to keep it real. I know what's coming my way. Because when you do that, and again, the clients I do get to work with, directly in my office, what we find is that we use our therapeutic sessions as a calibration. They're like, yeah, like, I feel like I'm slipping, and I'm like, what did you think was going to happen? And they're like, oh yeah. So it's so easy to want to put expectations about human behavior on this narcissistic person that are realistic. Like a normal person would do this. That's not what you're dealing with. Your expectations have to be skewed to what it is you're dealing with. Like I said, that's what I do with clients. That's, therapists could do, some coaches do. Basically you drift back to like, but a normal person, I'm like, that's not what we're dealing with, darling.
Right.
Let's get you right back here.
So expect that they will do all of these
things. And
that
so
we're
when it
talking about.
happens, you almost chuckle to yourself, even when some of these emails come back. And sometimes I did have the clients send me the email and say, you're not, and I'd actually start laughing. I'm like, here we go. And it's like clockwork. I mean, it's literally like clockwork. So that clockwork can be sort of settling to us.
Thanks for watching part 1. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, make sure you do that now. Also, download my free Crush My Negotiation Prep Worksheet. The link is below. And make sure that you check out all the other videos on my channel about how to negotiate with a narcissist. You will want to make sure that you are fully prepared. This is the end of part 1. Part 2 is coming soon. And today is a great day to start negotiating your best life.